This is Climate Justice, Y'all, a podcast dedicated to lifting up and centering the climate and environmental justice movement in the South. Despite the South being the most biodiverse, diverse, and one of the largest economic engines in the world, we are underfunded and often barred from the decision-making table. Because of that, we decided to pull up a chair and amplify the stories of communities in the South hit the hardest by the climate crisis.
We're using good old-fashioned storytelling to shine a spotlight on these Southern leaders from all walks of life, putting in their blood, sweat, and tears to transform the region. The usage of y'all in the title is on purpose. We are honoring our Southern heritage of creativity, resilience, and ingenuity.
All right, y'all, it is season 2 of Climate Justice, Y'all. Let's get started.
Hey y'all, I'm your host, Marisha Malcolm, and I'm joined by the fabulous Abigail Franks. We all know the rural South isn't exactly known for having the best infrastructure, such as roads, energy efficiency, internet access, water systems, etc., just due to lack of generational investments. It is so important for our community to invest in rural communities.
Today, we're talking to a public service commissioner from Mississippi who is dedicated to just that, ensuring that rural communities have access to better infrastructure, especially relating to energy. Climate justice, y'all. It's real, it's here, and it's about time we listen to folks like Commissioner Brent Bailey. All right, let's get started with the show. All right, good morning, Commissioner Bailey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Good morning. How are y'all?
We're wonderful. First, we just want to thank you for coming on the show this morning with us. We hope everything is going well with you. I guess we can get started. So first question is, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you and what is the Public Service Commission?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to join you on the podcast this morning, to discuss some of the issues of the day that's important to our office, to you as representative of the Southeast Climate Energy Network and the Climate Y'all podcast, and of course your listeners out there. So my name is Brent Bailey, and I'm the Public Service Commissioner for the Central District of the Mississippi, in the central part of the state, 22 county region, and I serve and represent constituents. I've been a commissioner now starting my third year, or well into my third year. And it's just been an amazing experience thus far, and the multitude of issues that come before the commission, and working with a diverse set of partners and stakeholders, and constituents and customers and utility providers. Every day is a little different. Never know what the next phone call is going to bring. But it's certainly been a pleasure to have this opportunity to represent the folks of Central Mississippi on, like I said, all these issues that deal with energy generation, distribution, whether it's, electricity, natural gas, telecommunications, water or sewer. We also dive into issues around no-call, robocalls, spam calls, and we also deal with pipeline safety issues here in the state.
That's amazing. So it sounds like the Public Service Commission is basically in charge of every facet of our lives when it comes to, like our energy, our water, all of it. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
It certainly is. It does have a significant impact, every day when you think about all the bills that you pay at the end of the month, throughout the month. Mm-hmm. In some way, shape, or form, we have some kind of impact on that. Our regulatory oversight and our jurisdictional authorities is certainly not uniform or universal across the state regarding the various types of utilities that we interact with. But through quality of service issues and things like that, where our jurisdiction may fall short in regards to rates, tariffs, billings, and things along those lines, we certainly do our best to ensure that all customers, regardless if they're being served by an investor-owned utility, rural electric cooperative or association, or municipal or utility district, that they are receiving adequate, reliable, and affordable utility service.
Well, thank you for sticking up. I wish we had commissioners like you in Alabama, so we really appreciate that. Yeah, so you work with energy, you work with utility rates, and from my understanding, you are a Republican in Mississippi. And so To me, you are a prime example of the fact that like renewable energy, energy efficiency, things like that shouldn't be divided by political lines. Could you talk more about like your work around renewable energy and why people on all sides of the political spectrum should care about this?
I certainly agree with your statement there that, the access to energy, the cost of energy, the reliability of energy should not be politicized. But in today's world, we find that happens on a lot of different issues. Mm-hmm. My work with renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean energy technology, et cetera, goes back many years. My days of working with agriculture, forestry, livestock, rural communities, trying to understand ways to create new revenue opportunities for those sectors, how to capture certain waste streams or byproducts and convert them into a revenue generating component that adds to the production profile of that agroforestry business. And it's really where it got my start and, sort of got teething on the whole energy discussion and conversation. And it was, in that effort to try to help identify ways for landowners, ag producers, others to engage in the energy sectors. Well, we saw a lot of the regulatory, technological, even financial challenges that prevented, unfettered access into that realm. And so I had the opportunity then to engage with a group called the 25 by 25 Alliance. And it's a national initiative, and to be there, boots on the ground and eyes and ears at a regional level, working from Texas to Virginia to Florida and everywhere in between, promoting the message of energy diversification, distributed generation and the benefits it provides, and how rural communities can participate in a slow but certain energy transition. And so using that message of economic development opportunities, consumer choice and empowerment, diversification of the resource and the reliability benefits it provides, along with some of the other, certainly what is probably of more interest to this listening audience is certainly around those environmental attributes it provides, and emission reduction and carbon reduction, greenhouse gas reduction, pollution reduction, things along those lines, and how there is a societal, and in some cases, a valuation, a monetization valuation, oftentimes difficult to achieve and predict, but recognizing that, stacking all those benefits on top of each other does create a societal as well as an energy benefit as well, and to help promote that message that, we're all participants in this conversation, and that renewable energy and clean energy technologies, and particularly energy efficiency, helps expand that resource base, creates more opportunities for business growth, small business growth, particularly in rural areas, as the addition of clean energy resources adds to the resource adequacy and the base of available energy resource. And it does so at many times certainly an affordability capacity that is very attractive to new business development opportunities, keeping young people at home locally, engaging in a new technology to industry sector that for some parts of the Southeast or even Mississippi that was not visible even around just a couple of years ago. So it's a lot of those aspects that make me excited to be a participant in this discussion, this conversation, and as a regulator to help guide this along, and try to help avoid the political concerns or discussions around this matter, and show that these types of investments benefit everybody, regardless of political persuasion.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, it just shows, like, for one, the South seems to have an abundance of many different types of energy sources. So it makes sense to, like, try to keep our options open, and also remember that economy and environment doesn't have to be an either or situation. It can be an and situation.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay, so you work heavily in like rural communities and whatnot. Why should they care about energy issues and like just transition and things like that? Why should they care heavily about it?
Mm-hmm. It gets back to really the foundation of what the PSC stands for and our goals and objectives. And I think I mentioned them earlier, is reliable, affordable, accessible, just rates, and ensuring that they have comfort, safety, and wellness opportunities, and opportunities to achieve and succeed regardless of where you're located in the state, whether it's inner city, suburban, urban, or rural. And that's part of the responsibilities of the Public Service Commission and us as regulators to ensure that the access to that type of energy resource and affordable rate is a foundational goal, I guess you could say. These conversations continue to go on across many sectors and across many trains of thought. And, we certainly want to ensure that no community is left behind in that.
Right.
Regardless of whether it's energy, whether it's access to reliable, high-speed broadband and interconnectivity, whether it's clean water. Even in Mississippi, we still have something like, at a population of 3 million people, something like 350,000 people still rely on private well water for their drinkable water, and currently do not have access to community water systems. But even community water systems, many are aging, getting old, have not been invested in and are lacking in capacity and the ability to provide adequate pressures. And we need to ensure that we're targeting those investments, or the investments are being targeted through some of the federal and state legislation that we've seen, whether it's the American Recovery Plan Act, ARPA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and other mechanisms, other policy directives, federal, state, and local level, to ensure that key infrastructure is continuing to be maintained for not just this generation of Mississippians and others around the Southeast, but for that next generation.
So that's super dope. So I know we're speaking we're speaking about like rural communities and whatnot, but you also work within inner cities and trying to make that, or trying to push just transition for them as well, correct?
I think everybody, certainly we have, I guess, yes is the overarching reply to that. We respond and go wherever we're needed, and we can add value to conversations in support of resilient infrastructure, equitable access, affordable access to utility resources, utility services. We deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So, yes, the easy answer is certainly agreeable to that statement.
Yeah, and you're discussing a lot about infrastructure and stuff, and it kind of reminds me, for one, you're from a rural community too, right, Brent, Mr. Brent?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and so I grew up in a place that was the population is 700 total. And so I'm so sorry if you hear my roommate's cat in the background. He's very passionate about going outside right now. But anyway, as I was saying, sorry, what were you saying?
I said it's a pretty day. He probably does.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so, but anyway, well, because of that, we know the realities of the infrastructure or the lack of thereof in our communities. And so understandably, at least from my perspective, rural communities are concerned about being left behind. And Marisha talked about like a just transition and such. And we are really focusing on like the need for an energy transition nationwide to ensure that people can have access to like affordable and like safe energy. But I mean, this can all be very worrying for some, especially amidst like the COVID pandemic and everything. There's just a lot for people to worry about. So are there any policies or like steps that we can do to ensure southern rural communities aren't left behind in the energy transition? And if so, could you talk more about that?
Yeah, so you bring up a topic that is certainly of interest to regulators all across the nation, including the Southeast. And not everyone obviously has a similar perspective or view or I guess vision of what that transition looks like, will look like, or the aggressiveness at which the speed of it is occurring. But there's no doubt that we're seeing a greater addition of clean, renewable energy resources on the grid overall at different scale, whether it's utility scale, commercial scale, or even through residential community scale. It is happening. And a lot of drivers for that, whether it's state and local policy directives, whether it's the economics of that energy resource and the feasibility of the attractiveness of that investment, the cost competitiveness of that, and the challenge around constructing certain large-scale baseload generation resources and the public's attitude toward that. Those are all things that we must weigh and consider as we look at what resource adequacy looks like, reliability of energy provisions, and the resiliency of the system in times of extreme events, particularly if that's extreme weather events as we see quite a bit of here in the Southeast. And we got to balance the investments needed to ensure those with the affordability side of the equation for our rural community members. And it's not an easy either or scenario at any time. And there's many details, many perspectives that has to be weighed and considered in looking at both the short-term adequacy proposals versus long-term generational decision-making that must be considered regarding assets, regardless of the energy type, that has a payback of, sometimes 20, 30 years or more. And the financial toll that could put on multiple generations of ratepayers. It's certainly, it gets challenging at times. There's no doubt about it, given particularly my propensity and desire to see a more diversified energy mix around the state. And I know rural communities, county economic developers, and others are excited about seeing this technology grow. I know here in Mississippi, we just did doing some calculation the other day, and we have a couple thousand megawatts of solar that has either been approved, that is being evaluated, or that will shortly come before the commission for review and consideration. That translates into, I think, just under $3 billion in investments in those rural communities and the jobs it brings and the new energy capacity that adds to the state. And all these counties are certainly excited about that, particularly rural counties where large manufacturing prospects are few and far between. It's a way to showcase the county as a provider or a host of this clean energy technology and the revenues it brings back to those counties through taxes ad valorem into the school districts, et cetera. And perhaps those technologies could be a precursor to a future manufacturing or businesses that want to be close by or associated with a clean energy resource. And so it's been exciting to be part of that discussion, that conversation thus far. And that's just one component of it. We want to continue to facilitate that. It's going to require, some investments in infrastructure, how those costs are allocated throughout the rate base, who those costs are assigned to, and done in a way that does not, economically disadvantage ratepayers, but at the same time is constructed in a way to further incentivize or attract these innovative investments to the state. It has to be balanced out. And I think I've used that word a couple times, balanced out. But we certainly, our charge as commissioners to balance the interests of our ratepayers, number one, to ensure that those providers of those services in the state continue to be fairly compensated to provide adequate services and good customer service, as well as understanding the economic opportunities that we're, hoping to facilitate for the state of Mississippi and its citizens. So it's always a balancing act that we're engaged in, but we know deep down that this transition is certainly occurring. We understand in certain cases the political and policy ramifications of decisions that are made, and then as for better or for worse, as an elected official in this capacity, understanding the mindset and the feelings and the demands of the consumers here in the state, and what they would like to see, as well as knowing what that monetary impact could be on rates and what's acceptable and what is not.
It sounds like to me. Sorry, did I interrupt you, Commissioner?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, well, first of all, everything that you're saying, I was like dancing in my seat when you were talking about the $3 billion of investment essentially going into rural communities. That is so exciting, especially with it being like solar and everything. But it sounds like to me the main components of ensuring that rural South is safe, especially during to make it a truly just transition, if you will, is to incentivize and invest in our infrastructure and diversification and inclusion of renewable energy, and to also balance and ensure, make sure there's a lot of discussion that's happening around it. Am I understanding you correctly, Commissioner?
I think there's a good summary there.
Perfect.
A lot of the high points, I appreciate that. I'm going to go back and listen to it.
No, I mean, you're inspiring and everything. I mean, the way that you were talking about how you have to consider multiple generations, to me is so, it makes me feel a lot better that people like you are in office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It certainly is. I know we're pressured to respond to the issues of the day, tomorrow, this week. And that's kind of just human nature. And I'm sure today's, social media and cyber world and all that kind of stuff, and our propensity to achieve instant satisfaction possible. But understanding that these are, the decisions, many times decisions we make are generational, multi-generational, because these are long life facilities and they are going to have long-term impacts. And hopefully those are positive impacts, for issues around, cost and affordability, resiliency of the system. And then, in many cases, what does this do for environmental sustainability as well?
I also love how you say resiliency. It sounds like my family back at home, so I love it.
Abby, we love you.
Well, I mean, it feels so good to have a rural person on this show. We've had it before, but it's just awesome.
That Southern twang, you got it. You got it down locked. Okay, Mr. Brent Bailey. So before we end the podcast off, we love to ask all of our guests, what gives you hope during the challenges that we all face day to day in your everyday life, in your job, things like that? What just gives you hope to keep going?
I mean, what drives me back, brings me to office every day, keeps me on the road and gets me out is seeing the many different people around the state, around the region, across the nation, to learn and hear about what gives them hope, what drives them. I'm always pleased when we have a docket or open an investigation or some type of activity around a project or rulemaking. The large number of stakeholders that we have that, generally large number of stakeholders and diverse set of stakeholders that add their voice to the conversation, that either whether it's agree or disagree with some of the positions that we're taking, the PSC or myself, it's always healthy to hear hear those perspectives and garner that input and apply that to our decision-making process. And then to be able to travel around and share with others, what the role, what our responsibilities are, and hopefully, I guess, further, let folks know that government is working. I know it seems in these days and times, government may not be a good word in some aspects and in politics, et cetera. But we're doing, certainly with the support of stakeholders and the input of a diverse set of, citizens, that we're absolutely doing the best we can to deliver on, the promises that are the commitments that we've made in a way that's responsible and, provides these long-term benefits that we want to see to grow Mississippi.